So you are in Ask Christiane Anything, building your design business in the digital age. My name is Britt. I will be interviewing Christiane.
The moderator.
I will be the moderator as well. And we will be talking about exciting questions around what does it look like to be a designer in this new crazy world of the digital age. Basically, we'll be mostly leaning on Christiane's experience as a designer herself and an entrepreneur. So let's start with Christiane, you're introducing yourself.
My name is Christiane Lemieux. I am the founder of a company called DWELLSTUDIO, which I sold to another company called Wayfair in 2013. I am currently launching another direct-to-consumer home furnishings business here in New York. It is called The Inside, and we are doing custom furniture via e-commerce for designers and customers all over the United States. Our new website is going live today, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please check it out.
Theinside.com.
Theinside.com. And I'm here to help you figure out how to build a business around interior design in the new world in the new sort of digital age. And so we have lots of questions.
Yeah, looks like we're already getting a whole bunch of questions. So we'll start with the ones that we had, and then we're excited to get in there and answer the questions you guys are already sharing. So let's start at the top. The digital age can mean so many different things. So when we're talking about that digital age, what does that mean in terms of what consumer expectations are, or inspiration and commerce? And what is different about a digital age versus the physical age?
The physical age. Well, I think like everything else, design and interior design are moving online.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? It means a whole bunch of different things. It has a whole bunch of different ramifications. So first off, I think that designers now have access to a lot of the trade platforms that used to be housed in buildings. So you can be a designer from almost anywhere and see product and have access to product that at an unprecedented rate that you probably never had access to before. So that's one of the things that I think is important about the digital age, that designers can work from anywhere. They can work virtually. They can source virtually. And there's a lot of tools at their disposal to create, whether it's mood boards or full-scale drawings or whatever they need to do to complete a project. You can get those, those are readily available. There's a whole bunch of solutions online digitally. I think the other thing is that we now have the availability of these platforms to be able to market ourselves, not only locally, which it used to be a very localized business, but now we can market ourselves both nationally and internationally, for that matter. So we're seeing this play out. People are hiring designers from Europe to come to the U.S. and vice versa, and so it's a much more open situation now. You can really market yourself across many platforms and speak to many different people. And so the digital age is actually very, very helpful to the interior design profession. It's just really coming online now, but I think the tools are very exciting to interior designers. So I think it's starting with, don't think of yourself as being an interior designer from New York or Los Angeles or Miami or Austin or wherever you are. Think about being an interior designer, period, full stop. And so servicing this entire digital market.
And so in terms of marketing yourself, if you were going to pick one channel, what would you pick?
Well, I think it's personal. Like I think marketing yourself and the channel you pick is personal. Some people have a lot of success doing it on Facebook. Some people have a lot of success doing it on Instagram. Some people have a lot of success doing it on Pinterest. Some people market themselves on Houzz or other of these large scale platforms. I personally have found I am most comfortable on Instagram because I like the efficiency of the image and I like to write captions. So it's just something that works for me. Some people like larger, much more involved platforms like Houzz, and some people have found a dialogue both locally and nationally on Facebook. So I think it's really about finding where you're comfortable and actually digging in there. So getting significant traction on one platform. I think it's hard to get significant traction on all platforms as a solo operator. Listen, if you have a team that's working for you, you could segment the platforms and attack them that way. But I think as as somebody who's doing it themselves, it's always good to choose your lane.
Mm-hmm. And what, you obviously have a beautiful Instagram, and a lot of it is sort of iconic interiors. If a designer is thinking about building out a presence on one of these channels, how much of his or her own portfolio should she share in that kind of forum?
So I think this is a question that comes up a lot, because people are concerned about their intellectual property and interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the following: if you don't do it, then you don't exist in the digital age. And I think it's one of those things that we all have to get comfortable with. There are a lot of ideas out there that people are being inspired from each other, but to not participate in order to protect yourself actually ends up being very detrimental. So I think one of the most important things is, obviously, everybody in this day and age has a website, but having a website that is representative of your work. I think thinking about whatever channel it is, whether it's Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook or Snapchat if you want, but putting your work out there and building a visual kind of language is very important as a marketing tool for designers. And so I think not doing it is a real impediment to your growth as a brand, to your reach with consumers, and to sort of participating in this digital age.
Yeah, interesting. And another kind of hot topic that I think about when I think about how interior design has changed with the internet is this rise of online platforms. So the Home Polishes and the Laurel and Wolves. And do you see those as an opportunity for designers? Are they changing the market? Are they expanding the market? Kind of what is your perspective of how they are changing a very old industry for our audience?
Well, I think it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good thing because, if we take 3 steps back, if we think about what the internet has done, both blogs, Pinterest, some of these platforms, is they brought a lot of visuals and a lot of content to a very large audience. And I think the result of that is that the design IQ of everyone has gone up. So all of a sudden we're being exposed to visuals that we never would have seen because we didn't subscribe to that European magazine or all of these new cues. And what's happened is that now everybody is seeing really beautiful interiors, and everybody wants a very beautiful interior regardless of the price point or budget around that. And so what it's done is it's taken what was a relatively small market and has made it a very big market. And so what that does is give a lot of opportunity to interior designers to market, present their work, and grow their businesses across a wide spectrum of project price points. And so I think it's a great place for designers to be. I think it's a very exciting time.
And if for a designer who is starting out or looking to build out a client base, do you think of those as an entry point or an end game, or how do they help someone who's kind of building out his or her career?
Well, I think it's a great entry point because they're going to take care of a lot of the, just like I do. They're going to take care of a lot of the back end services that are, that get in the way of designers getting their work out there, really presenting themselves, really thinking about the visuals. It's also a platform. So eyeballs are coming to you when you're on one of these platforms versus you standing in the middle of the sea of, internet noise and trying to be seen. So I think it's a really great platform. It's a really great jumping off point. I think platforms like House also showcase people's work. And once you start to have an established visual dialogue, it's much easier than to start to drive people directly to your website. So Home Polish is a great place, or Laurel and Wolf, or Havenly, a great place to start. And I think long term, a great place to stay because it's going to be a continuous stream of work. And then the more projects you do, the more beautiful visuals you put out, the more you engage with people online, the more people are going to see your product, and the more they're going to dialogue with you or come directly to your website, and the more, so the more clients you're going to be able to garner.
And so I'm interested in going back to kind of what you shared about putting yourself out there on social. I think I know we're having some audio issues, right?
Are we having some audio issues?
Maybe we'll come a little closer and
Okay.
let us know if that helps at all. Uh-oh. We're getting some feedback that the audio is choppy. Okay.
Can you hear us now?
We're good.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Excellent. We'll
good
lean
idea.
in. We'll get really personal.
Yeah. So here, we can make it so you're not cut
Okay.
off. Okay.
I'm just getting close to the.
There we go.
Okay.
So I'm interested in going back to the conversation about Instagram. Something that we've talked about before is how amazing it is that something like the Museum of Ice Cream has turned a building into an Instagram event. How do you think, how should designers be thinking about the role of Instagram, not just as a marketing platform, but really as something that's changing the way that people think about and consume design?
I mean, I think sort of all of these platforms, especially Instagram, are very interesting in the world of design. And I think that this is something that designers should think about a lot. It used to be that design...
Sound is good. Okay,
good. We're like really leaning in close. It used to be that design was informed by the visuals we saw online. And now, like, the world has changed a lot, and now visuals are actually being formed by their Instagram abilities. So you can see whether it's residential designers or commercial designers, people are really now thinking about, how do I design a world that's Instagrammable, that's shareable? And what does that mean for residential design? I think that people really want interiors that are special, interiors that they can share, interiors that are personal. And I think the long-term effect of that is that people are actually going to design their spaces more often than they do now, which I think ends up being a great thing for the interior design profession.
Yeah, that's such an interesting observation. You mentioned that people's design IQ is now a lot higher just because they've been fed a lot of inspiration and have had more access.
Yes.
How does that, the traditional role of an interior designer was partially to create the vision, but also to source product that was hard to find. And now increasingly, certain websites have brought trade-only brands. Our website, The Inside, tries to bring the price way down on really awesome design. How does that transparency that the internet has created impact the designer?
So I think it impacts the designer in a couple of ways, and I think it's about, when you think about digital design, it's about, how do I solve for this? And I think oftentimes the new digital customer is very savvy, right? So understands where product is coming from, understands the price points, can use things like Google and Google Image to find what they're looking for at various price points. And so I think the designer brings obviously a whole bunch of things to the table in the new digital world. One of them is obviously their expertise. Another is their ability to source product. And so we're seeing that designers are now being compensated for their time, and they're largely also utilizing their trade discounts to pass it forward and help their customer out. And so I think if you can be transparent around what you're buying and buy it for your customer at the discount, then they're very likely to engage with an interior designer because they can see that the value is also transparent.
Yeah. So thinking, kind of shifting back to what should a designer do to build a business in this changing environment? So one thing that I'm sure the audience is familiar with is that you've written several design books, which perform really well and are beautiful, beautiful pieces. Should a designer write a book? Is that something you recommend? Should we use blogs as our medium? Like what's the role of publishing in terms of building a name?
I think that creating content and creating compelling content is a big part of the marketing strategy. So, along with pictures and online portfolios, if you can provide your audience with design tips, with meaningful content, it goes a long way to marketing your brand. So I was going to answer Patty's question. Patty is asking, are you saying to give your product to your clients at your cost? I'm saying that that's a negotiation you have to have with your clients. generally speaking, I mean, the word of thumb is no. But in the digital age, a lot of people are very savvy to the fact that interior designers get discounts, and oftentimes part of the decision to hire an interior designer is to be able to access their discount. And so I think it's a really important conversation to have up front with your customers, saying, you know what, I'm going to bill you this, X amount per hour, and I'm going to back that discount into this. It's going to be totally transparent, and that's the way we're going to work together. It really depends on what your relationship with your client. But I think in the digital age, that's one of those things that's worth discussing right up front, because clients are pretty savvy about designer discounts. Oftentimes, as somebody who's in retail, we get people that aren't designers asking for designer discounts because they understand that we're building that into the cost structure. So I think it's not about passing it on to the client. It's about having the conversation around that with the client very early on, so that there's transparency, and so that the relationship isn't compromised in any way afterwards if that's not on the table.
Yeah, Patty, feel free to respond if you want, and we can keep having that dialogue. I'll keep an eye on it. Questions or
yes.
Here.
Okay. So how much time do I spend on Instagram every day? Well, that's a really interesting question, and people ask me that often. So I manage my own Instagram account, and I'm very disciplined about it, because if you spend too much time on Instagram, you can probably end up it can consume your life. So I try and post something first thing in the morning, and I think as you get a sense of your platforms, you're going to get a sense of what time works the best, so it works the best for maximum engagement down the line.
Yeah.
So I tend to post in the morning, and then it's really important on Instagram, especially as you're building a community, to answer people's questions. So I answer questions, or I respond to comments. I only post once a day. Now, I have a pretty established Instagram account at this point. So originally, I posted about 3 times a day, and I'm very selective about what I post on Instagram. So it's either something from the book that I'm writing, or something from a project that I photographed, or something that's really inspiring to me and probably inspiring to my audience. Another really important thing about Instagram is it's a give-get scenario. So the more you give your audience, the more you're going to get back. And I think people really want to engage on that platform, and they really want to be inspired. So I'm very careful about what I choose to post, and when I post it, and how often I post it. It shouldn't feel like another job. It should feel like something that's helpful to your business. But if it starts to feel like another job, find an intern, or somebody to help you out.
On that front, some of the questions that I was just taking a peek at, and something I wanted to ask you about was you mentioned, you should really focus on one, because you may not have a design team, a team
or bandwidth.
All.
Yeah.
Like, you're so good at managing all kinds of things, and having a book deal and a licensing deal and a business. Would you recommend for someone to try to create an outsourcing moment or build a team around it? Like, at what point do you start sort of looking for help to really engage all of the channels?
I mean, I think that's a business decision. I think, it's obviously A, when you can afford it, and B, when it makes sense.
Yeah.
It also depends on the type of person you are. Like, I'm so protective of my brand and the visuals and the experience that it would be hard for me to outsource it in a way that I would feel good about. I think it's a lot easier to outsource it when it's a business and not as personal. So I think that's a decision.
You keep it pretty close to the chest.
I keep it close to the chest.
So another kind of theme that we're seeing is designers start to sell their own product. And it could mean that they either seek out a licensing deal. It could mean that they started their own e-commerce store. It's sort of a marketplace model on their own site. How do you think about, in terms of building your own business in this digital age, how do you think about actually starting to blend content and commerce, which is happening on all these channels, through your own brand?
I mean, I think that's where a website comes in handy. I also think that's where getting great photographs of your product, of your projects, is really important, because a lot of designers use workrooms to create their own product. And I'm seeing platforms that are starting to address this now. So if you create really beautiful product from your workroom, you can put it online and start to sell it as your own items. And I think that becomes a really interesting additional source of revenue for designers.
Yeah.
So the European designers are doing this a lot, actually. Because if you're going to the trouble of designing, speccing, and manufacturing products for clients, why not take those same designs and actually make them available for sale? So I would say you have to get in front of that. So it's all about photography. So if you create really beautiful product for a project, photograph it. Photograph it as a silhouette before it goes out of the workroom, and make sure you have that documented. So if you ever want to turn around and start selling your designs, you have the assets on hand. It's like playing the chessboard, 3 moves forward. Make sure that if you're going to the trouble of creating it, that you have the assets afterwards in order to be able to sell them.
And I mean, you know better than anyone that photography is really expensive, especially really good photography. So, if I'm just starting out or just run my own shop, what would you advise in terms of how much to invest? Is it double down on one project? Is it get a really good camera and learn how to become a photographer? Like, how would you think about creating beautiful visual assets on a budget?
Well, I think if you're scrappy, really scrappy, you figure out how to photograph your own projects. I think that there's a lot of things you can do in post-production to make them really beautiful. So I suggest like outsourcing that on like a platform like Upwork, where you can find somebody who will be able to retouch your photographs at a really reasonable rate. I think you want to photograph all your projects, and I think you want to put them out there online in some way, shape, or form, both on your website and via social media, because then you can start to speak to a lot of customers, a lot of potential clients, and also you can see what resonates in the work that you're doing. And I think that's really important, because it's a moment to have a large group of people weigh in on what you're doing, and then to find the people that are looking for your aesthetic. So I think it's really important to get good photographs of your projects. Yeah.
When you were first starting Dwell Studio, how did you approach photography?
When I was first starting Dwell Studio, I mean, that was something that I invested a lot of time and money in. So because I think there's nothing speaks to your brand and your design beautiful. So photographing both and the product for our catalog and putting it out there in the world. And I used Instagram, and that's largely how I went.
Yeah. Wow. So we've been for about 30 minutes, and I can switch gears and start answering. We're going to some of your questions. So it looks like Tara has been sort of moderating the online forum, but if you do have questions, you can ask them like right around here, and we'll tick through them.
Okay, and Kathleen, how do I post 3 times a day? There are a whole bunch of super secret tools online that allow you to post. So there's a platform called Schedugram, SCHEDU-GRM. And what Schedugram does, it's a pretty amazing thing, is it allows you to upload photos to Instagram, and comments, and will post them for you automatically. So that's how I worked around. I look for every hack and bot there is in order to avoid hiring somebody to do my social media, just because, later.com does that as well. Yes, thanks, Claire. So there's a lot of platforms that will take care of scheduling your Instagram for you. And of course, once you schedule Instagram, you can also easily port that over to Twitter, Facebook, and your other platforms, even Tumblr. Mm-hmm. So I think there's ways to automate it so that you don't have to spend your time doing it. In fact, Sprout and Hootsuite, yes, these are all really good for scheduling. And they'll give you, some of them will do it for you automatically, and some of them will prompt you to push them out. But you can automate it so that it's pretty seamless, and you no longer have to hire people to do that for you internally, and it saves a lot of money. And you can also be very careful about what you post. I would say the one problem with some of those particular services is that they tend to down res your images. So what you want to be very careful about is choosing high quality images when you upload so that they don't down res and it doesn't look fuzzy and then you're not proud of what you're posting. That was the only thing. Yeah, Schedugram. Hi, Sherry. SCHEDUG.GRM. It's actually an Australian company, and they do a very, very good job of this. But if you also Google, what services can I use to automatically post Instagram, you'll find a lot, and you'll be able to fiddle around and find out which one works the best for you. But there you go. Thank you, Tara.
What are your tips for scheduling is great. What are your tips for reaching more audiences? Obviously, your feed is amazing and kind of grows organically. But how do you think about for some of these people how to grow their feed?
So growing your audience it's about consistency. It's about in the beginning posting a lot. It's about really responding to the comments you get, and it's also curating your feed so that it really speaks to who you are and sort of what you stand for in terms of design. And I think that's the best way. I think another great way is to engage with people who share the same kind of design philosophy as you do. So really kind of maximizing, kind of creating a pod effect. So if there are people that you really appreciate who have a similar aesthetic to yours, reaching out to them, kind of collaborating with them, talking to them back and forth, engaging as much as possible.
Instagram is clearly the platform today for super visual businesses. All kinds of possibility. Do you think, how long will Instagram be the leading channel, and what's sort of next?
I mean, we think about this a lot. I think one of the platforms that's coming up that I'm very interested in is WeChat, which is actually a platform out of China. It's very similar to, it combines a whole bunch of different features, but I'm sort of tinkering around with investing time there, because I think as that market grows, and I think the functionality of the platform are really great, I think people are going to start, even in North America and Europe, they're going to start spending time on the WeChat platform. So I'm looking into kind of how to Instagram game that particular platform now. It's really, really early days, so I'm happy to follow up. Once I kind of figure it out. But I'm really interested in it's WeChat is actually the platform. Yeah. So you can download it onto your phone and start experimenting with it. I think that there's going to be a lot of traffic on that platform over the next 5 to 10 years.
So switching gears a little bit, I'm thinking about your book Undecorate. Talk to us about high-low. How can a decorator help someone? Is that a trend, and how can a decorator help someone really fulfill that decorating philosophy? The
high-low philosophy. I think everybody kind of has their signature decorating style, but I think in this day and age, people are really interested in curating in a whole bunch of different price points into their interiors. I think it makes it very interesting. So whether it's hunting for vintage or finding pieces that are sort of much more accessible in terms of price points, and then mixing them into interiors, I think that's kind of the philosophy that really works for the digital age. Everybody wants to find the secret source where they can get something really beautiful that's inexpensive. So I think designers that are able to find products at various price points and mix them into interiors, I think that's what clients are largely looking for, at least from us. And we're seeing that as a trend across the board.
At the inside, you mean? Right?
Yeah, at the inside, yeah, generally, yeah.
So we have a whole bunch of really juicy questions. So I'm going to switch gears. So Claire is asking, what is the best way to approach creating a private label for online?
A label for sale online. Well, I think the best way to approach creating a private label for your brand is to leverage the designs you've done largely for the interiors, the projects. So people are much more likely to engage with you and buy product if they can see it in one of the interiors that you've done. So I would say that, again, as you design product or as you design interiors, make sure you get a great silhouette photograph of what you've done, and then put it up online on your website. And I think largely, all of these platforms, whether your website is run off of like a Shopify platform, or any of these, Squarespace, all of these sites now have commerce-enabled features where you can just throw it up and sell it.
Yeah. We're gonna have a little noise in here. So in terms of just a follow-up question on that, once you've developed your brand or your private label moment, where do you recommend selling it? Is it about creating your own website? Because that obviously means you can control the brand, but there's traffic implications. Do you go on a house? Like what, if you were starting out, where would you start?
I would hit it all. So once you have the asset, you can put it on your website, you can put it on house, you can put it on all of these channels. I would say that, in the beginning, as you think about your business, growing it and marketing it, it's all about being as visible and as ubiquitous as possible. So you want to get in front of people in as many ways as possible, which is why having a great asset is the best way to go. So interior shot of your project, or great silhouette of something that you've designed, and then putting it on a lot of platforms, and then seeing where you're finding the most customers, the most traction, and the most iteration. So that's what I suggest. Just go everywhere.
So the next question is something that we touched on a little bit earlier. It's around this reality that obviously because of the internet, consumers are really able to shop for themselves. So, what used to be trade-only product is online, and you can reverse Google image something like crazy. So what are ways that designers can, this is a specific question, elevate their services, or basically create a moat around why should you still hire a designer if you can source your own product? How does a designer tackle that challenge?
Well, I would say, being a designer and being part of the design community, we all know that sourcing the product is actually not our most valuable skill, right? Yeah. Our most valuable skill is things that are really nuanced, like placing furniture and floor plans and choosing colors and choosing upholstery and mixing and really, pulling the client's wishes and dreams out and having them manifest in reality. And so I think that the narrative should shift away from I can source you products that you can't get because that's not really true anymore, to I can create this space of your dreams. And I think that's really making sure that your clients value your talent as opposed to your shopping skills. And that's where I would, as a designer, that's where I sort of really dig in now. I think you've got to show your vision, show how beautifully you can execute, talk about all of the things that you can do to bring a space to life. And that's why having the discussion around the designer discount up front is a very good thing, because if you get that out of the way, then you can really do your job.
Yeah, that makes sense. So next up, we have a question from Isabella about House. So what is the best way to stand out on House? Isabella says that most of her business is referral, word of mouth, and she's starting to look into actually being strategic about finding new clients.
Okay, so I think House is a really interesting platform. It reaches a lot of people. The other thing that's interesting about House is your ability to reach people beyond your kind of word of mouth local scope, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The most important thing on House is having great imagery. So the better your imagery, the more it gets seen, the more it gets shared, the more you're getting your kind of vision out there. So I think on House, it's really important to have a beautiful and robust portfolio, so that when people come in, they can see all the projects you're doing, the ranges of styles that you can execute on, and really understand your visual language. So I would say, again, invest your time and effort, obviously beyond the beautiful work you do, into capturing that in a way that's shareable.
Comes back to photography. It sounds like.
Yes. Okay, Pam. How important is it? Pam is asking, how important is it to prioritize hiring a professional photographer to shoot your projects? I think it's very important. Unless you feel very confident you can do it yourself, I think it's very, very important. As somebody who also writes for outlets like Architectural Digest and Clever and a bunch of different platforms, I get inbounds all the time from designers who want their work featured in editorial. And, you know, largely that gets decided on obviously how beautiful the project is, but also the execution around the photography. So if you can hand me amazing, you know, blog or like platform story-worthy photography, I can write a story about your interior, and I can, you know, I can choose a platform and get it published. So I think it's important, even beyond attracting consumers, it's important because then you put yourself into the content cycle. And as a designer, I think there's nothing more important than being part of the content conversation. So I would say prioritize. Jonathan Adler once said to me when I was starting out very early on, he said to me, Christiane, spend your shekels on photography. And I've never forgot that. I think it's true, and I think it's really important.
So this one hasn't come up yet. How important is it to attend markets like High Point, ICFF, etc., in terms of probably like understanding what's out there and also just being visible and building your brand?
I mean, I think it's interesting because I think there is where designers can really add value to the kind of interiors discussion, because sometimes at some of these shows you're going to find either a product that's not out there and readily available, right, or you're going to make a relationship with somebody who's doing something very interesting in design and then can execute either your product and help you from a manufacturing perspective sell it, and or help you create one-of-a-kind product for your interiors. I also think that there's a dialogue to be had there between manufacturer and interior designer in terms of creating content, and in terms of creating assets online, and also in terms of creating really valuable relationships. I think, do you have to go to everyone every year? No, but I think being selective about that and sort of prioritizing that in terms of return on investment, it's a really interesting and important place to see, what the trends are and to meet people who are creating new trends and new product categories. Oh, okay, this is a really interesting so Pam is asking, which content should we prioritize, Instagram, Facebook, or blog? It's hard to find all the time. Time in addition to running my business. Yes, I think it's really hard. So I would say it depends on what your best channels are. So for example, if your website gets a lot of traction, writing content for your blog is a really great way not only to engage your clients and engage prospective new clients, but also it's a great way to utilize Google for search engine optimization. So I think the blog is a really great place. I think Instagram and Facebook are just, it's sort of non-negotiable, unfortunately. So, if I were starting my business today, I would prioritize Instagram just because I think it's the thing that's out there the most, that's the most easily shareable as far as all these platforms goes. And also because Instagram has a feature where you can just post it on Facebook regardless. So you can sort of put your Facebook feed on autopilot. And then I would tie it all back into the blog. I mean, I think the blog is a nice to have, but not necessarily, if you're counting the hours in the day, not necessarily going to get you in front of as many people as your Instagram account. So I would start there and then prioritize down the kind of content funnel. So yes, so again, Kathleen, I post 3 times a day using one of these schedulers, just to be very clear. And the community has thrown up a lot of great choices here today. So it's a question of going out and finding which scheduler or which platform works the best for you. So Kathleen's asking another question. So if your client wants a design discount on furniture or will shop for themselves, would you suggest splitting that discount with the client? I think that's an interesting idea. I think, again, I think that's a conversation that has to be had in the beginning. So when you talk about your scope of services and you talk about, what you're going to do for this particular project, if that's something that you establish as a norm in your business, I think it's a really interesting way to make it, a win-win for both you and your client. I think a lot of you will find, and I don't know if this is necessarily true for you, but for me, people understand that I have access to a designer discount, and so will ask for that right up front and expect that to be part of the kind of package. So not only are they, expecting the design, but they're also expecting me to pass that that discount on to them. It's just
so there seems to be a lot of interest from the audience based on these questions in terms of taking your design services and transitioning that into some kind of e-commerce store, whether it's selling other people's brands or building your own. Super tactically, do you open up a Shopify account? Do you who handles fulfillment? Like how would you get started if you were kind of a single shop and wanted to start selling an array of products?
So, I mean, obviously, there are. I mean, it's other good news. So much less expensive today than it ever has been. So when I started WELLSTUDIO, I had to build a website from scratch. Now there's obviously all kinds of platforms. My favorite happens to be Shopify. We're building our new business off the back of it. It's very easy. It's very easy to scale. They take care of a lot of the back, the sort of ticky-tacky back-end stuff that no designer wants to take care of. I think that there's two routes there. One is you can think of it as a very traditional store where you buy an inventory and then you ship it out, whether it's a small scale operation or a large scale operation. I think I think for designers it's much easier to do something where you put your designs out there and you take custom orders and you fulfill them that way. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to tackle commerce. It really depends on what you want to sell. So if you want to sell your own goods, it's doing them on a custom basis, one-off basis is a great way to do it. If you want to curate an entire store, you can take really small levels of inventory and you can, create your vision and you can put it out there pretty inexpensively now. So it really depends on kind of what you want to sell and how you want to sell it. Mm-hmm. Yes, not Shutterfly, Shopify.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, we're kind of back to Instagram. There's a lot of interest in your photography. So what kind of camera are you using for Instagram photos?
So I have 3 different types of cameras, and it depends on the project. So I have a digital SLR for, bigger projects, or if I'm trying to capture something that might end up going into one of my books. So I want to have a high quality, very high res image. I have a point and shoot, which mine happens to be a Leica, which I take with me on travels, which is a slightly better experience than my iPhone camera. And largely mine's on my iPhone camera, and I use that for my stories and things like that. I always use my iPhone camera because it's a much more instantaneous thing. I'm much more thoughtful about what I put into my feed. So when you think about Instagram, now it's like a 2-pronged approach, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the photos you put in your feed that live there forever, ostensibly, and then there's the storytelling you can do that's much more on the fly in your stories. And I think stories, because they're ephemeral, you don't have to worry as much about the quality of the photos there. And I think largely people want to see what you're doing, and they don't want it to feel super slick and super edited. So I think the iPhone is fine for that.
Interesting. So shifting gears slightly, we're going to go to a question about just truly starting out. So obviously having photography is important.
Yes.
How do you get your first 5 customers? So, if you don't have a really large portfolio and you actually don't have a ton of photography to share, how do you really start?
So I think if I was starting today and I had my portfolio, I would leverage some of these channels. Like what you want to do is get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? I think you can leverage some of these platforms that are out there now. So put your portfolio on house. Believe me, people are looking for.
Well, even before you do that, how do you sort of hack your way into having a meaningful portfolio?
I mean, if you're gonna hustle, offer to do your 3 favorite friends' places at a discount in order to be able to get your vision out there and photograph it. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I'd be offering. I'd offer my services up for free initially. Get some really beautiful photography. Then I'd go out. I'd put it onto a house. I'd put it onto I'd approach a home polish. I'd approach every single design platform out there in order to get my work onto their sites, in order to get them in front of eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
I would put it out on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I would put it out on Facebook. I would, you know, I would structure a website, even if it had 5 things on it. I'd write a blog about what I care about in terms of design so that people can understand my point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of, you have to be everywhere.
Yeah.
You sort of have to be ubiquitous when you start out. And I think then you'll start to be able to see, where am I, like, ask yourself, where am I getting traction?
Yeah.
And when you figure out where you're getting traction, that's when you start to dig into one platform or another. Like that's
just start.
You just go.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how I would build a business if I had to start again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I would do it.
So this is another kind of platform question. What are your thoughts on selling on Cherish? Selling your product. Carrie, let us know if you want to elaborate on it. But the question is just thoughts on selling and Cherish. My interpretation of that is, you know, if you've collected antiques or whatnot, is it helpful to use that as a platform?
Yes. I mean, I think it's helpful. I think whether you're selling your vintage pieces or, I know that Cherish is moving into contemporary pieces in a very big way, as is First Dibs.
Yeah.
These guys are all trying to, grow their businesses, and there's just not enough antique inventory. And so they're starting to curate contemporary product onto those sites. So I think it's a great place to showcase your design, and to put your ideas out there. I don't think anything is bad. I think opening an Etsy shop is a good idea. As long as you have the time and the resources and you pick your lane in terms of where you're going to sell it, I don't think anything is bad. I think it's about, especially when you're starting out, it's about getting out there and being in front of as many people as you possibly can.
So Erin has a really interesting question that I know you have a lot of opinions about. Obviously, designers are they are their own business.
Yes.
And so how do you balance showcasing, selling yourself as a brand versus selling your business? And there's also a moment when potentially you're showing quote unquote attractive photos of yourself on that occasion. And so, where's this line between being the face of your business and also just showing your portfolio?
That's a really interesting question. And I think your audience will let you know how they want to interact with you in terms of Instagram. So I very rarely post pictures of myself, just because my audience is hardcore design. What they want, what I'm giving them is daily inspiration. And so that's less about, what I am wearing that day, or I've never gone down that the sort of more lifestyle aspect of interior design, because I'm also largely academic, right? So I write books, and so for me, I think it's less about who I am and more about letting the kind of work and idea and inspiration speak for itself. But listen, there's a lot of people on Instagram that are very successful, being an entire lifestyle scenario, sharing what they're cooking or sharing what they're wearing or sharing, their fashion tips or beauty tips as part of kind of a lifestyle as it relates to interior design.
That approach?
I think it's got to be what works for you. That's, I've tested a few, throwing out a few pictures now and then. My audience, that's not what they respond to. What they respond to is a historical photograph or something that I'm digging out from an archive. But that's my audience, right? You got to find your own audience, and they're going to tell you whether they want to see pictures of you more or less, because you're going to know by the engagement.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes.
So this is, again, there seems to be a lot of interest in differentiating between social channels.
Yes.
If you were to be on Instagram and Facebook, do you differentiate between what you post?
I mean, I think the answer is you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, just because I don't have enough time. Yeah. So for me, Facebook is like, I click the thing on my Instagram account and I post it to Facebook too. That's all I have time for.
Yeah.
And, but if if you've got time to hit all these platforms in a different way, I mean, I don't even post native pictures to Twitter, which I really should. It's just, I don't want to go the extra step to then, go into Twitter, put the same caption, put the picture in the tweet, and then send it up. I just tweet through Instagram in the same way. So I've really picked a lane. But again, it comes down to how much time you have in your day to be able to hit each of these each of these platforms.
So Rebecca has a really interesting question about your kind of perspective as a designer. So she points out that you have a very specific, defined style that manifests in a bunch of different ways, books, Dwell Studio, now the inside. Did you take time to sort of develop that perspective, or did that happen organically? And I think the implication for designers would also be, how cohesive do they have to be in the beginning?
I mean, interior design is interesting because the best projects are when a designer is like helping the client interpret their personal style, right?
Yeah.
And so not taking what you do and putting it onto your design client. I would also say, like, I think that style evolves, and so I definitely had a POV that came from European mid-century, just because that's sort of that is where I derive inspiration. But you know, the more you expose yourself to, the more you read, the more you research, the more familiar you become, the better your style gets. And so I think the great thing about interior design is, unlike other careers, the more you do it, the better you'll get. And I think that it'll just happen. It'll happen organically. So I think you know what you're drawn to, and you'll start there. But every project you do, you'll refine it and you'll hone it, and you'll get better and better and better. And that's the great thing about this adventure versus, you know, it's just like being an artist. The more they create, the better the product ends up being. So I think let it happen organically, and you'll see that it will become clearer and clearer what your point of view is, and that point of view itself will become better and better over time.
So there's a follow-up question to that, which is how did writing your books change your design story or your design perspective? Like, you know, obviously writing is a way of thinking, and did that clarify or change your views?
Very much. I think for me, because all design is rooted in something historically, whether you have Baroque taste or minimal taste, and so for me, understanding the kind of arc of design, where things start, why they are what they are, you know, getting access to, while researching my book, to, you know, the Condé Nast archives or the New York Times archives, or exposing myself to sort of that level of thought around design. I mean, all it does is make your design better, because you understand where it's coming from. You understand what problem that designer was tackling at that time. Just knowledge is power, and knowledge is really helpful in the creative process. So for me, in some ways, I'm writing books is also me educating myself on what the sort of best of the best is. When I did, that was part of the reason I wanted to write The Finer Things, is because I know some of the things I know, but I don't know the most, you know, the most nuanced things about wood floors, or I don't know, you know, what makes the best wallpaper. And so what I wanted really was an excuse to go out and talk to the best people in the world and understand, kind of get bits of their knowledge in order to put it into my design process and synthesize it. So it was really interesting.
Writing books is how you satiate your curiosity.
It is. Writing, well, you know, you're here with me. Writing books is how I work things out. It's kind of a laborious way to do it, but I'd say that, like, writing a blog is the same thing, or even writing a really awesome Instagram caption is also the same thing. Like, you're working your idea out and you're testing it on people. So I think that's
so. There are a couple. So we have 7 minutes left. There are a couple more tactical questions about Instagram, which seems to be of great interest.
Yes.
One is, you know, do you have any? Can you list any Instagram feeds that you think are really just doing a great job, that either inspire you or you think would be a good role model for some of these designers? And then, as sort of a follow up to that, we have Nicole's question, which is, you know, you post a mix of other people's photography and your own.
Yep.
What's sort of the protocol there? How do you balance it? Is there a rule of thumb around reposting and et cetera?
Yes. Okay. So I would say that, especially since I'm oftentimes researching a book, which I'm currently doing now. I will, when I have an idea, you know, when I come across a great piece of furniture or a great interior that's like an aha moment to me, that's like kind of, you know, a secret find, I will always share it with my audience. So, you know, I've gone down deep into the Brazilian designers, and it's like, how does their timeline coincide with the Europeans, and who had the idea first. And it's like a great investigation. So I will always share that, but I will always credit the photographer. I will always find the source. So generally, so it's like coming from, for example, T Magazine, I will credit the news outlet, and I will also credit the photographer. So I think that both writers, both outlets and photographers are super psyched if you share their work, but share it thoughtfully. Mm-hmm. So so if it doesn't have a credit, it's probably mine. And if it does have a credit, it's it's an idea that I'm sort of thinking about, and I understand the source material. So I think that's really important. As far as killing it on Instagram, I mean, killing it can mean many things, right? It's like, it depends on what killing it means for you. So killing it means for me when I follow an Instagram feed that's showing me something I don't see anywhere else, so that's inspiring me. So I go deep down the rabbit hole to find those types of Instagram feeds. So largely, I'll start out with a magazine, whether it's World of Interiors or, I don't know, T Magazine or, House and Garden UK, because I'll start to, what I'm hunting for is ideas that I don't see all the time. Killing it for somebody else might mean getting, 150,000 followers and being super consistent. So it really depends on what killing it means for you. I think largely killing it means growing an audience very quickly. And I think in order to do that, you have to have great content. You have to find your cohort. So find people that are in the same kind of design philosophy as you are, engage with them, have them engage with you back, and grow your base quickly that way.
And so you're a big user of hashtags. How do you know which ones to use? Or what can you learn from them? That's sort of in this family of very tactical Instagram advice. What's the skinny?
The skinny on hashtags is you want to make sure you find a mix of hashtags. So, I mean, everybody wants to hashtag inspiration because it's good, but once you throw your hashtag inspiration into I think I saw today there were 100 million hashtag inspirations, it's going to get lost. So what you want to do too is when you figure out what your personal style is, you want to find the relevant, either create your own or find the relevant hashtags in that cohort, and look for hashtags that have under 50,000 other hashtags, because then you'll be able to be seen in the noise. So you can hyper focus who sees your product. The other great thing is now you can follow a hashtag. So if you find that kind of hyper focused hashtag that really speaks to your aesthetic, people can you will get into that hashtag feed as you post, and that's another great way to get in front of audiences. So I would say,
cool. That's
mix
interesting.
Mix it.
Yeah.
Mix your hashtags.
So we probably have time for one or two more questions. So I'm just taking a quick look to see what we're working with here. Okay, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but it seems to be something people are really concerned about. The decorator discount is...
No, we covered that one.
We covered it.
We covered that. We're good. We're good there. Top 5 suggestions from Michelle. What are the your top 5 suggestions for sites to sell your furniture? Well, I think that's really interesting. Michelle, it depends on the quality of the furniture. Obviously, if you're selling design icons, you probably want to go right to somewhere like First Dibs. If you're selling just, just regular vintage furniture or finds or your own contemporary stuff, I would say hit them all. So Cherish is a great place to do it. eBay is a great place to do it. Etsy is a great place to do it. Those are my 3 favorites. House is a good place to do it. I like places that have traffic, so that they're not so obscure. I like places where if you're going to go to the effort to upload things and get them out there, write the descriptions that are necessary, photograph them in the way that are necessary, that there's going to be enough eyeballs on them that it's worth your time and effort. So I would say, and again, one great asset, you can post across all of those platforms. So I would say hit as many as you possibly can.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Is there a way to take your older photographs to a higher resolution so that you can use them? This is coming from Kathleen. Yes, the one place you can do that really effectively is in Sketch. So you can take your photographs, upload them to Sketch, and up-res them, and then post them onto Instagram,
cool.
Facebook, etc.
Okay, so
that's the only hack I've found.
We are going to end with a controversial question.
Wow.
What do you do when a client buys a product for a room that ruins the look so you can't photograph it?
So it happens a lot. Yes, Kathleen's sketch. Yes, you can download it. It's very easy to use. Sorry. I'm going to jump back to that question. So here's what I would say. The minute the staging is done, photograph the room because it'll never look like you want it to look like ever again. I think you have to assume that the day after you install that things are going to be not to your liking because people bring in their own personal knickknacks and things like that, and
right.
it can change the vista of a room instantaneously. So I would say that the process is install and photograph right away.
Okay, so we are up on an hour. Thank you, Christiane. Thank you, audience.
Yeah,
the questions were really fun. I love seeing them tick in.
Yes.
So I think we're done.
And
thank you very much.
And we're always here to help. If you have any extra questions, you can send them to us at hi@theinside.com.
Yeah.
And we'll be very happy to help you with anything.
Yeah, and if you have comments on our website that clearly this is an engaged audience, send us feedback, theinside.com.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks,
have a great
guys.
day.